Just how similar are Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer? How would you begin to compare the two? That and plenty of more great questions from you guys, the everydayers. It's Mailbag Monday here today on Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Let's start another week here on Locked On Blue Devils as we get closer to the start of football season and so much more. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop for everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. We talk a lot about Duke football and Duke basketball, primarily dabble in some other sports from time to time as well. But if you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You can also watch our show each and every day on YouTube as we continue to get so close to 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. I can't wait to celebrate that milestone with all of you guys. We're about 50 away from 4,000 subscribers. So that's going to be awesome to celebrate that with you guys. Today is Mailbag Monday. We're going to dive into several of your questions that you asked. A special shout out to our everydayers who are there. Our friend Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham will be a part of the show as well. So without further ado, let's bring Kev into today's show. And we just talked a second ago, Kev. We're almost to the midway point of August, man. Like Duke football is going to play a game this month. All of a sudden, we're getting back into it. The dog days of summer are winding down and fall is coming.
Yeah, man. Dog days over. Ready to get back into it. And thanks for having me as always, JJ.
Of course, man. We got to do this mailbag. So I thought we got really good questions. Again, folks, send it to us on YouTube here. Also to our social medias at LO_Blue Devils. Got a few via email always. LockedOnBlueDevils@gmail.com. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the Duke basketball team. I really loved this one. One of the questions that we got, Kevin, were how would you even compare Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer? Because a lot of people are going to do that. We've done that already as you look at the recruiting classes and who you want to build your team around. John Shire's talked about that a little bit with the level of recruit that Cooper Flagg was and molding a roster around him. And he's already kind of put Cameron Boozer in so many ways in that same category. So how even do you begin to compare the two?
You know, I think it's tough because Cooper Flagg coming into college was the do-it-all player. And, you know, I think maybe unfairly some people would put the label on him like he didn't do anything overly well or elite, right? He just did everything really, really, really good. But when you look at it from Cameron Boozer, people, and to be honest, I think that was wrong, right? We could say Cooper Flagg was elite at a lot of things. It wasn't like, oh, he's just really good at everything. So that was wrong. Cooper Flagg was elite. You saw his three-point shot get so much better in ACC play. Obviously, you saw the athleticism. You saw the ball handling skills. You saw the defense. You saw the mid-range. You saw getting to the rim. So he was elite at a lot of things. For Cam Boozer, you know, I think people look at him more as a post player. At least that's where a lot of the highlights came from in high school and on the AAU circuit and all those other things. But what we've seen recently is he has a mid-range game. He has a three-point shooting game. Now, obviously, we haven't seen all the defensive skills yet because you're not going to get that as much in these highlight videos because, let's be honest, who really wants to see that much defense in a highlight video? You want to see the offensive skill set. So I do think they're two very different players in their play styles. Obviously, they're two highly sought-after players. They're going to be two of the best freshmen. Cooper Flagg was the best player, not just the best freshman in college basketball. Cam Boozer is hoping to be a player like that as well. But I think they are very different in what they bring to the table and how they are going to help, how Cooper Flagg helped and how Cam Boozer is going to help the success of this Duke team.
Let's keep going, man, because there are more comparisons to make with these guys in their recruiting process, right? With Duke prioritizing them and Cooper Flagg getting out of the initial same recruiting class as Cam Boozer to stand alone himself. And we just saw what he was able to do throughout his lone season. Both Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer, Kevin, as we well know, are twins. They're twin brothers, as you've got Cameron and Cayden Boozer. You've got Cooper and Ace Flagg of the twins. Both Cameron and Cooper are the larger, more physically imposing of the twins when you look at them. I don't have my research down to know if they were born in the same order as one another, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the case when we look at those similarities. And then also just like their youth, man, the fact that Cooper grew up in a basketball playing family. His mom was a D1 basketball player. His dad was a heck of a basketball player as well. Ralph with the big size. And then we know what Carlos Boozer did throughout his career at Duke. So just their DNA makeup. John Shire talks about kind of the intangibles and the families that they come from when he looks at his top level of recruits. Like, we can even break it down to that level as well with these guys.
No, 100%. You can, and people are going to take it down to the absolute finest detail. And I think Cameron Boozer, it's not unfortunate, but he is at the disadvantage of immediately following Cooper Flagg, one of the best freshmen we've ever seen in college basketball. And that's a lot to live up to. Yeah. And I hope people aren't putting that expectation on him that Cameron Boozer is going to come in, fill Cooper Flagg's spot, and be one of the best freshmen that we've ever seen. Because obviously, if you're playing the odds, that's not very likely.
We really didn't. What's also not likely is that we would be able to play the twin dynamic, right? Like, what are the odds? We're comparing these one-and-done freshmen back-to-back, and they just so happen to have their own twin brother in the equation as well. That's crazy, Kevin.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, for Ace not coming to Duke, he ends up going to Maine, playing for his hometown college or his home state college. But Duke getting Cameron and Cayden Boozer, and then obviously the lineage with their father, Carlos Boozer, being one of the great Duke basketball players. So there's certainly a lot of storylines when you try to compare the two.
Love getting the chance to talk about these guys. And with Cameron Boozer, as we compare him to Cooper Flagg, with the team kind of being built around them. It's going to be so obvious. That's what people are talking about from this open practice that Duke had last week. Like, Cameron Boozer is the guy. Cooper Flagg was the guy. Cooper played with a team that had the entire starting five drafted for Duke. Well, guess what? Cameron Boozer is going to have a lot of really talented players around him on this roster as well. When we're already looking at way too early mock drafts going into next year, it's very clear Cam Boozer is going to have NBA guys around him this season too.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I don't think there was much of a debate that Cam Boozer was going to be the number one coming into Duke this season. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. Everything's going to run through him just about. So I don't think that's probably the least surprising thing that came out of this open practice. But, a lot of Duke players are hoping to be first-round draft picks. I mean, obviously, you talk about a guy like Dame Sarr, who people thought if he went into this past NBA draft, he could have been a first-round pick. The expectation is he's going to be a first-round pick next year. Obviously, you look at a guy like Cayden Boozer, who people are a little bit more bullish about, but certainly could play his way into a first-round pick. You look at the guy down low and Pat Gongba and Isaiah Evans and Nicholas Hemenia. There's guys who have NBA aspirations and are hoping to be first-round picks in 10 months. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But for Cam Boozer, I mean, he's trying to catapult himself to be the number one overall pick. And it's going to be very competitive this year with guys like A.J. DeBonson and Darren Peterson. But I think you have to put Cam Boozer in that conversation, probably just a little bit below those two right now as the clubhouse leaders to be the number one pick next year.
Much like Cooper Flagg was able to separate himself from his teammates, I believe we'll see Cameron Boozer begin to sort of separate himself from his Duke teammates as well in terms of just pure talent and what they're able to do. All right, we're going to talk about some of the tournaments in college basketball. We've got conversations about potential weaknesses for Duke and so much more. So we will continue that portion of conversations here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Kevin Connelly's here with me today. It is Mailbag Monday on Locked On Blue Devils. Thanks to our first question there, talking about Cameron Boozer and Cooper Flagg. Next one comes in. What will Duke basketball's theoretical biggest weakness be when they open the season? What do you think, Kevin?
You know, JJ, I don't want to be a broken record, but I've said it a couple times on this very program, and I think it's the point guard play. I think you have to have some skepticism and question marks around Caleb Foster just for what he went through last season, and having that starting role on opening night, and then throughout the season was mostly a non-factor until very late in the postseason, and then theoretically behind him on the depth chart, or maybe not behind him on the depth chart if you believe some of these not reports, but observations coming from open practices, is that Cayden Boozer has been playing really well. So, and him being a freshman. So I think right now, at least to me on paper, it is the point guard position just because of those two question marks, but I could be proven wrong, and we'll certainly have to see.
Yeah, we could go a couple of different directions here maybe, but if you're talking biggest weakness, probably that lead guard spot would be the one that you point to, because when Duke has been successful over the years, someone has taken hold of that top primary guard spot and set up teammates well for success. And with it not being Caleb Foster's natural spot that he slides in, and you mentioned Cayden Boozer, I don't know, man. It feels like after watching Duke Blue Planet and seeing how Coach Shire was hyped up in that film, clearly fired up about, or mic'd up, seemed like he was hyped about Cayden Boozer and how he was playing and how others are as well. If he does take a step forward, more so than people might expect, it won't be as big of a weakness. And maybe we'll be talking more about, front court depth. What is there beyond Pat Gongba and Malik Brown and Cameron Boozer? Can you get something productive and game-like out of Ife Ufuchukwu? Maybe that would be the next thing that takes over as that biggest weakness, Kevin.
No, it's certainly the case. And when you bring up, like, when Duke has had success, someone has emerged as a primary ball handler and a lead guard. The other thing I would add to it is, like, going into the season, there was somebody defined who was going to be the point guard. Whether you look at a guy like a Trey Jones or Tyrese Proctor, Tyus Jones, Quinn Cook, the list goes on and on. There weren't question marks about point guard going into the season. Now, necessarily, I don't know if there's question marks from that point of view going into this year, because you do have a guy like Caleb Foster and you do have a guy like Cayden Boozer. But it just, to me, like, I'm somebody with that position. I have to see it to really believe it, that could be a strong suit. And then you mentioned the front court. I think you could say that a depth up front. You have a guy like Pat Gongba, who has certainly had some of his fair share of injuries over the past season, going back to his senior year of high school. Malik Brown has some injury history, obviously dislocating his shoulder twice last season and getting surgery. And then Cam Boozer, I think, certainly could play some five. You could play a little small ball with Cam Boozer at the five, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do see that at points this year from Duke. So I think that's a valid point that you bring up the front court and the potential depth, because I don't think Iwuchukwu is going to get much significant playing time at all this year.
Yeah, so, knock on wood that we're not having to battle all these injuries this season, and that guys can stay healthy. Let us know in the comments answers to all these questions, one, as we continue to work through the mailbag, but also what you think in terms of a biggest weakness for the Duke basketball team. Okay, here's our next Mailbag Monday question that comes in. Do you like this new Players Era tournament in Vegas, or do you prefer the traditional regular season tournaments that we've seen, like Maui? This writer sent us a message there. I think Maui, Battle for Atlantis. There was always that 2K Classic that would be played. So the Players Era tournament in Las Vegas, I know you're familiar with this one, Kevin, but if people weren't aware, the Players Era Festival is a college basketball tournament focused on name, image, and likeness opportunities for players. Held during Thanksgiving week in Las Vegas, it debuted in 2024 with 8 teams and is expanding to 18 teams for the 2025 season. The tournament offers a guaranteed $1 million to each participating team with additional NIL opportunities for players and a potential $1 million bonus for the championship. So if people weren't exactly aware of what we're talking about, when we look at the state of college basketball, a preference question here, dude, I'm a sucker for Maui, man. Just being in that small gym and that sort of thing. When we're looking at preferences, that's kind of where I jump to first.
Yeah, JJ, I could probably give you a much better answer on this in a couple of months because I'll actually be at the Players Era Festival this year in November in Vegas, covering St. John. So I'm excited and looking forward to it. I've never been to Las Vegas, so first time for that, and obviously first time being at this tournament. I will say, though, this tournament, obviously, and you went through all the NIL benefits that it is. It's obviously hurting the other tournaments because if you look at the fields for Maui and for the Battle for Atlantis, Charleston Classic was one that's always been a big one. And you mentioned a couple of those like 4-team tournaments like the 2K Classic. And I don't think Jimmy V Classic was a tournament. I think it was just 2 standalone games, but I'm sure I'm missing a couple of them. They were loaded fields. And I think the emphasis that is getting put on this Players Era Festival, in addition to home and homes, and I think everyone loves home and homes because when you look at Duke, for example, they're not in the Players Era Festival, and they're not in another one of these MTEs, multi-team tournaments. They're loading up on home and homes. So yeah, I think those other tournaments are really hurting. I think conference expansion is really hurting these other tournaments because you don't have as much of a smorgasbord to pick from because like with the additions of the SEC and the Big Ten, a lot of teams are in the same conference, and you can't have a lot of teams from the same conference in your tournaments because they can't play each other until conference play. Now Vegas is a little bit different in how they're doing it. They're setting it up into pods with all these 18 teams because there's multiple teams from the same conference in this event. So the way they're structuring it, and the one thing I will say, because I think get a much better idea, is that the way the Vegas tournament is being run this year with 18 teams compared to how it was last year with 8 teams is very different. So I do side with I love watching the Maui Invitational. I love watching the Battle for Atlantis. I love watching these other multi-team events. But this year I am excited for the Players Era Festival, and I could probably give you a more substantive and definitive answer in a couple of months on this question.
All right, I had to I needed to refresh my memory. Like, what are some of those other ones just being put on the spot here, Kev, like we are? Of course, we've got Cayman Islands Classic, the Legends Classic that's typically down south here in the Southeast. The Phil Knight Invitational is another one of those big ones that we've seen Duke play in over the years. But something like Maui, I think also just the history there. Hard to believe Maui played the first ever Invitational in 1984. And here we are talking about the Players Era debuted in 2024. Quite a bit of difference when you look at the history.
And with Maui, it went through some struggles. There was its fair share of obstacles, especially within the last 5 to 7 years. Obviously, they didn't have it because of COVID, because of the Hawaii wildfires. I think it was played in Honolulu for a couple of years instead of Maui.
Right.
And then like after COVID, I think they had the Maui Invitational in like South Dakota or something like that. So
I remember that.
Yeah, it's been impressive over the last 5 to 7 years. How many obstacles the Maui Invitational has been faced with, and it kept rolling on. But the field this year just not that great. So yeah, I'm excited for Players Era, but I think we're really going to see this year where everybody lies.
Yeah, and then in 2020 on the back half of COVID, also Maui was relocated one season to Asheville, North Carolina, to my hometown. I totally had forgotten about that until you brought it up. But yeah. Shout out to Asheville getting the chance to host Maui in years past. All right, let's go ahead and we'll take our next time out here on the program. And then when we come back, we've got a few more topics to dive into, a few more questions here on this Mailbag Monday. Locked On Blue Devils here today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen and your first watch. For your second listen, make sure that you go check out the Portal Show. Locked On's very own Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. You can find the Portal on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. Also check out Locked On College Basketball with hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. They talk a lot about college basketball each and every day. I'm sure they've got Maui opinions and thoughts on the Players Era Invitational and so much more like we're talking about here on today's show. So go check out Locked On College Basketball wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Kevin Connelly is here with us today from Ball Durham. It's Mailbag Monday. Always good to see Kevin throughout the weeks here on Locked On Blue Devils. Our next question that I got to ask you here, Kevin, who gets more minutes this year for the Duke Blue Devils? Is it Malik Brown or is it Patrick Gongba?
I think it's Patrick Gongba.
Yeah. I immediately thought Pat, but then the more I think about it, man, I think this is such a good question because I think that number could be really close, dude. I think it could be really close.
I can see it splitting hairs like 20 and 20 as well, but I think the slight edge to Patrick Gongba just because he is going to be the projected starter. I think he's in for a really big year, JJ. I'm not going to lie. Yes, we're going to talk about Isaiah Evans and we're going to talk about Cam Boozer and some of the other freshmen like Dame Sarr and Nicholas Hemenia and whatnot. But I think Pat Gongba is in for a really big year. Now, I don't think necessarily you could see him averaging a double-double, but I think he's certainly capable of a 9 and 7, a 7 and 10 type of year. And I think he's poised for a really big year. And just with maybe the limited offensive skill set of a guy like Malik Brown.
Yeah.
And obviously he doesn't have the height that a guy like Pat Gongba does. I think Pat Gongba would be my answer to that question.
To put the numbers out there, and again, a guy like Pat Gongba last season was playing behind his fellow freshman and Kaman Malawach, who we loved having out there on the floor. Malik Brown played 16 minutes a game last season. Pat Gongba played 11 minutes a game. So a difference of 5 minutes there. And like we're both agreeing, I think that's going to be much closer this season. I think it's a larger role for both of those players, honestly. But Pat Gongba being your primary 5 going into the season, it appears, I think would lead you to believe there's an opportunity for him to play a little bit more.
And I don't want to say those numbers are skewed from last season, but if you remember, Pat Gongba really saw the minutes increase once Malik Brown got hurt.
Right.
Now, obviously, that's expected because Pat Gongba was your third-string center, and he's not going to get a lot of time in close and competitive games over a guy like Kaman Malawach. But
let me give you those numbers. 16 minutes for Pat Gongba and 26 total games on average. And then for Malik Brown, 16 minutes, 26 total games for Malik Brown. And then 30 games, so 4 more games for Pat Gongba on the season, an average of 11 minutes per game.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I don't want to say they're skewed, but the minutes certainly became more in bulk for Pat Gongba last year. But like I said, I think he's in store for a really big sophomore season.
Okay, last question. Mailbag Monday today. Which Duke basketball freshman will improve the most throughout the season? Is there a world where we could choose 5 of these guys? Kevin, is there an argument for a lot of them?
I think there's an argument for – I could be forgetting somebody for 3.
The Boozers and then Dame Sarr? Or are you putting Hemenia and
no? I'm not putting Cam Boozer in that 3 that I'm thinking of. Just because I think he's going to be so great from the beginning of the season, similar to Cooper Flagg. Did Cooper Flagg get better between game 1 and game 39 or whatever it was? Yes.
Absolutely.
But like there were probably other freshmen like a Con Knipple who got more
Malawach, man,
better,
who
made more progress throughout the season. So I'm not putting Cam Boozer in that conversation. The 3 I think you could pick from are Cayden Boozer, Dame Sarr, and Nick Hemenia. And I'm going to go with Dame Sarr because I think there is going to be an adjustment for Dame Sarr once the regular season starts and learning the college game and playing in America. And yes, he has all this talent, but I think there is going to be some type of a learning curve he goes through for a portion of the non-conference schedule before he really hits his stride in ACC play. I debated when you sent this question over between Nick Hemenia and Dame Sarr, but I'm going to go with Dame Sarr, who makes the most improvement throughout his freshman season.
And I actually wanted to make a case for Cayden Boozer here, Kevin. So not even Hamidi. I wanted to make a case for Cayden Boozer, but after listening to you, it's hard for me to go away from Dame Sarr because I just, you're right, man. Looking at him right now, we're simply looking at an open practice here. At times, I guess you would say he looked a little uncomfortable out of play, getting settled into the college game, I think is how you put it. And I certainly agree. Dude, what he's going to be at the end of the year, though, like I'm really excited about the possibility that's there. I guess for Cayden Boozer, it's that you understand going into the year that Caleb Foster has all of this experience in front of you. And so in some ways, that lessens maybe the expectations that are there for you. And by the end of the season, when you're able to see a fully developed Cayden Boozer finding his own shot, setting up teammates so well, that would kind of be the improvement track I think you could lay out for him.
No, 100%. That was kind of my similar thinking of it, is that, yeah, Cayden Boozer, he's going to get better because, as people say, he's going to be a developmental player. But if Caleb Foster really shines and is on his A game throughout the entire season, how much time is there for Cayden Boozer to get on the court?
Right.
So I really thought long and hard about all three of those players, but the explanation I gave about Dame Sarr is why I eventually landed on him.
The verdict is in. The verdict is in. Mailbag Monday, we're going to go Dame Sarr to close it out with our choice there for the freshman that could improve the most. Awesome stuff. Thanks to everybody for the questions. Be sure to comment in future episodes, questions that you might have here with us on YouTube. Send us an email, lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com, or on X at @LO_Blue Devils. And make sure you go check out Kevin's work with Ball Durham. Tell us about it, Kev.
Yeah, balldurham.com. We got fresh content up there for you every single day on Duke football, on Duke basketball, Duke in the NFL, Duke in the NBA. We got it all. So come give us a read over at balldurham.com every single day. And JJ, I want to add, I've been on a couple of these Mailbag Mondays with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this might have been our best batch of 5 questions that we've had. These were some really, really, really good questions for a Monday in August. So
the people are stepping their game up, man.
I got to tip my hat to the listeners and viewers out there. These were some awesome 5 questions that really made you think. And I know everyone's excited for a Duke basketball season. So hat tip to the Locked On Blue Devils viewers right there, man.
Shout out to all the everydayers. That's Kevin Connelly. There he goes. Always love chatting with him each and every week. Who knows? We might even get Kevin to stop by again later this week. He's so great to us here at Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our show here today. Again, please subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We're on Instagram and TikTok. Also check us out on X at @LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.